Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so glad that you are all tuning in, whether this is live with us right now or you're watching this conversation at a later time. Just really pleased to have the opportunity to chat and interact with you all today. My name's Mike Rowan. I'm the Associate Director of Communications at Chorus America, and we're here for a conversation today. We're going to talk about a program that we've newly redesigned and are relaunching called the the Online Course Management Institute. And we have some new updates to the program to share, specifically on something that's very important to us to do more work in, and that is access, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And today we have our new faculty member who will be working teaching this content and has been working with us to design the program, Antonio C. Cuyler of Florida State University. And I'll give him a little bit of an introduction right now before we bring him into the conversation. Antonio C. Cuyler is Associate Professor of Arts Administration and Director of the MA program at Florida State University. He is a new faculty member of our Online Course Management Institute and was a presenter at our 2020 virtual conference this June. Throughout his career, Dr. Cuyler has amassed a portfolio of diverse teaching experiences in arts administration education. He is one of few faculty who has taught degree-seeking students at the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral levels. He has also taught online, face-to-face, in private and public art schools, as well as at a private and public university. He is the first Black man to earn a PhD in arts administration and the first Black man to earn promotion and tenure in his discipline. And he is wholeheartedly devoted to enhancing and increasing the educational attainment of arts managers, especially those of color. Antonio, I'm so glad to be talking to you today. Welcome. Great to see you.
You as well, Mike. Thank you for having me.
So I'm excited to talk to you a little bit today about your work and about the Institute. I wanted to start just by checking in a little bit. You are a professor, and the school semester is right around the corner. I bet I didn't ask you exactly when it starts, but this is a semester like no other. So I just wanted to ask you how things are going and how you're feeling right now.
Thank you for asking that question. So actually, I am on sabbatical from Florida State this academic year, or at least the fall and the spring semesters. And I am visiting at the University of Michigan in the theater and drama department, where I'll be teaching in their performing arts management minor. And so what I appreciate about UMich is that they ask me what I wanted to do, and they gave me the choice. And so I said, well, I feel more comfortable teaching remotely. And so I'm not so much concerned about myself because I'm still sheltering in place and, socially distancing and wear a mask when I do go out. But I am more concerned, I guess, for my friends who are, doing face-to-face teaching in classes and, especially given all of the cases that we've seen in the news at, UNC Chapel Hill, Notre Dame, Michigan State, where, there are breakouts that are happening that should be really challenging colleges and universities to rethink their reopening plans. But so I start classes next week, and I am in the last phases of wrapping up my syllabi and picking guest speakers, and so that's all exciting work for me right now. And but how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for sharing that with us, and thanks for throwing that back to me. It's funny that you mentioned the University of Michigan, my alma mater. Thanks for the plug there. But I've recently moved from DC, where the Chorus America office is. And I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan right now. I'm actually planning to go to Detroit sort of as my new home base. But sort of in the interim time, I'm here in Ann Arbor, and I'm spending some time with my parents. My sister is in town, so it's in some ways it's a very sort of like weird sort of interim, but it's like a sort of an interim that I had already been planning and working towards. So I'm enjoying that extra family time in unusual circumstances. I know I'm well aware, but that has helped in sort of like a period of adjustment. Stuff is weird, so it's going to be different. So I felt like this a big kind of different. I think helps a bit, to really change things up. Um, so great, and I hope all of you out there, please let us know how you're doing. I know there's so many situations out there. They're all unique, and we at Chorus America are here to hear those and help you with those. Through everything that we do, including this institute that we're talking about. And so, Antonio, you have focused your entire career on diversity, equity, inclusion. I should say access, diversity, equity, and inclusion is the model and the initialism that you use, that you've told us. And so I would love to hear you talk about how you brought this focus into arts administration, and like how did that come about? Like why were you moved to make that your focus, and how does that tie in?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So when I started my master's degree program in arts administration at Florida State in 2001, my initial goal was to become an artistic administrator of an opera company. And as I got closer to graduating, I started looking around the field, and I could not find one artistic administrator who identified as Black. And that led to questions about, well, where are the Black arts administrators or opera administrators? And then where are the indigenous arts administrators in opera? And then where are the female arts administrators and the differently abled and those who identify as bi, gay, lesbian, or same gender loving? And so that started in about 2001 and has continued. And I've made it a really important part of my research contributions to the field, because when I first started studying at the doctoral level, there were studies that I wanted to read and that I wanted to cite, and I did not see them. And so, inspired by Toni Morrison, I just decided that, well, if I want to see certain things in the literature, then I have to write them. I have to conduct those studies and create them. And so, because of my long history of thinking about this work and how it fits within the cultural sector, particularly and in arts management and arts administration, I determined that ADEI, I see them as frames, as four different frames: access, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what I'm very excited about exploring further in the Institute is how ADEI can be integrated throughout the curriculum. And so ADEI has an impact on fundraising and on marketing and on financial management, and how it can be woven throughout the entire curriculum so that those who are attending will have a different perspective and who will be able to think more widely about all of the things that they're doing and how it impacts the people that they engage and the people that they want to engage with, who they are currently not engaging.
Awesome. I mean, particularly really cool to hear that you've sort of done the studies that you wanted to see out in the field. That is really inspiring. So thanks for sharing that. You started to touch on the framework that you use, or sort of each of the letters: access, diversity, equity, inclusion, having a frame. And one thing we've talked a little bit about with you, various members of the staff, is a phrase that is on a lot of our lips these days is anti-racism. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, teasing out access, diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism. What's the relationship between those? Is there a distinction? How do we speak about each one specifically without getting those confused? Can you tell us about how those relate? I think we'd be really interested to hear.
Absolutely. And so first, I want to talk about why I use ADEI, Access, Diversity, and Equity, because and inclusion. Because in the sector, you'll find that some people use the acronym IDEAS, which is inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And success, and then there are some people who use DICE for diversity, inclusion, cultural equity, and so they're different acronyms, but I specifically use ADEI because implicit in the arrangement of the frames is this kind of staircase, if you can imagine it, where access is the first staircase, the first stair that you have to step on. And if access is achieved, then it leads to diversity. And then if access and diversity are achieved, then you can start having conversations about equity. And then if access, diversity, equity are achieved, then we can move on to inclusion. And then once you've achieved all four, access, diversity, equity, and inclusion, at the top of the staircase is creative justice, which Mark Banks inspired me to come to the definition that I use these days is the manifestation of all historically marginalized, oppressed, and subjugated peoples living creative and expressive lives on their own terms. Now, as ADEI relates to anti-racism, the way that I think about it is that anti-racism is a specific form of, resistance to Black or racial oppression, right? And so if you're take anti-racism is really a remedy for um, exclusion, a lack of diversity, inequity that may have come before it. And so the way that I think about ADEI specifically as it relates to anti-racism or anti-racist is that, first of all, have you created access for Black, Indigenous, and people of color? And then once there is a significant amount of access, if you've removed all of the barriers to participation, then you can achieve diversity that is representative of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So then that's access and diversity. And then once you can have, conversations about, well, what do you need to be successful? Then you can talk about all of the things that Black, Indigenous, and people of color need to be successful because equity is very different from equality. And this is something that we will explore further in the Institute, the differences between equality and equity. So now that we've achieved access, diversity, and equity, then we can talk about inclusion, which essentially for me is creating a space of belonging. And so this whole these frames, thinking again about the staircase, access, diversity, equity, and inclusion moves us closer to becoming anti-racist. And so also anti-racism is again a form of being against and resisting oppression. And the way that I conceptualize this in this matrix that I will also teach from in the Institute is that there are about 7 social identities that humans carry that lead to a lot of tension, misunderstanding, cultural clashes, and such. Age, class, sexual orientation, gender, race, ability. And so what happens is that, there's a targeted group, there's a group that is privileged by this social identity, and along the path towards becoming anti-oppression, it is all of our responsibility, whether we are privileged or unprivileged by the particular social identity, to become anti-racist, for example. But I also want to caution us, because I know that racism is the ism du jour right now because of the killings of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, George Floyd. It goes on and on and on. Rayshard Brooks.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
so we are our attention is very much so focused on racism and anti-black racism right now. But I agree with Audre Lorde when she says that there are no hierarchies of oppressions. And so in the same ways that we aspire to be anti-racist, we must also aspire to be anti-ableist or anti-ageist or anti-adultist or anti-classist, anti-sexist, anti-heterosexist. We need to be anti-oppression, and anti-racism is just one form of oppression that we are resisting, in terms of uh, particularly racist policies, practices, and procedures that have been put into place to undermine the success of Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Well, Antonio, thank you so much for further explaining that and reminding us of all the isms, racism included, but certainly not the only one. I really appreciate that, and I know during the institute there's even more time to dive into this. Um, in addition to your expertise in the field of ADEI, you've taught in so many different formats, including face to face and including online, which is very relevant right now, as we're all learning in different ways, as much as we choose to or not. But in this specific program, there as some of you out there, you might be sort of maybe going back into an online course, having not really taken those in any substantive way in a while, and done more face-to-face coursework in the past. So, Antonio, from your experiences, um, like what are some tools for success, or things that online learners can keep in mind to get as much as possible out of the online learning experience?
Oh, that's wonderful. So first, I will start by saying that when teaching adult learners, I tend to take a more andragogical approach, and andragogy is the art and science of teaching adults, whereas pedagogy is the art and science of teaching children. You know,
Oh, wow.
and so one of the major differences between students or children and adults is that adults are self-directed, right? So the attendees who sign up for the institute are choosing to participate, and so they're going to have a different kind of motivation for doing the kinds of learning and the content that we will use to engage them. And so I think that we'll probably use a hybrid synchronous and asynchronous approach. So there'll be assignments and readings that the attendees will complete on their own, and then provide discussions that can lead to further advancing their learning. Because it is, to me, in an online setting, discussion based learning is very, very important to have people reading content and then talking about it and what they think about it and what they can use from it. And then, comparing and contrasting with their classmates is going to be key to keeping everyone engaged. But also the content, the kinds of readings. I've already begun selecting some readings that really kind of shows the historical paths that we've taken in the cultural sector relative to ADEI, and some of the constructs and some of the discussions that we've been having. Like there's one article that dates back to 1989, right? And that's about the same time that Kimberly Crenshaw started talking about intersectionality, and Peggy McIntosh started talking about white privilege, right? And so from 1989 to 2020, you would think that there would have been much more progress made than where we are right now. But as we know, sometimes change is slow, and then all of a sudden something happens and it creates a seismic shift underneath the ground in which we stand. And now we're all compelled to change and move forward in transformative ways. And so I see the opportunity at the Institute as a way to engage adult learners in something that they care very deeply about, and to also inspire them to think about their practice in ways that they may not have thought about it before they took the Institute.
That's awesome, Antonio. I'm really excited for this. So in our conversation, this has kind of led us to the Online Institute and how all of these things come together. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about either what you have planned or just, even just the structure. We have these courses as part of the Institute that include strategic planning, that include governance, something that is also new, which is budget and finance, of course, marketing and fundraising. And we haven't really done specific work in this program in the Institute with access, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you've started working with us, and instead of sort of just like tacking it on, um, you've been really thoughtful in working with us and how it's integrated into the whole program. But you can speak to that much better than I can, being a part of this design. So I'd love to hear you, expound on anything that you'd like to say about that, about how this all weaves in together.
Yeah. So I was just in a meeting at UMich where we were having a conversation about which is better, right? Like an infused curriculum, curriculum that's infused with ADEI or a one-off class. And really, there hasn't been a lot of scholarship around which is better. We do know, however, that students who have privileged social identities benefit from taking this content perhaps more than those who have marginalized social identities. And so I thought in the institute, what if we could, what if we don't have to choose, right? What if we can do both? We can
Mm-hmm.
integrate it throughout the content areas of strategic planning, marketing, fundraising, governance, and finance. And we can also bookend it with some ADEI content and some at the beginning and some at the end. And that's really been the approach that we've decided to take. And we're going to be excited to evaluate it and see how the attendees, appreciate it or value it. But I'm really excited to be thinking about, marketing from a perspective of, okay, you're always getting those repeat customers or those repeat consumers, those people who are, traditional ticket buyers, and they're going to always show up for the choral concerts. But what about the people who don't come? How do you market to them? What do they need to, get inspired to come and participate in your offerings? And even thinking about it from the standpoint of the chorus, right? The choruses tend to be larger organizations, which mean that they have these incredible social networks. And if the chorus isn't diverse in the first place, so that would also mean that some way, somehow, maybe the chorus hasn't provided enough access, which means that it hasn't removed all barriers to participation. Then what are you missing out on by not having a more diverse chorus, which means then that the chorus would lead to a more diverse social network? And how is the chorus not benefiting from that diverse social network? And so these are the kinds of discussions and thought-provoking conversations that I'm looking forward to having in the institute, and even about fundraising, right? Like, when I took fundraising back in 2002, I remember the textbook we read suggesting that, for example, Black people don't give, like, we're not philanthropic, and it kind of annoyed me, right, that this white author made this assertion without really understanding that, yes, Black people do give. They give in different ways than white people, and that's okay. But also, beyond what this author misunderstood, Black people also give to cultural organizations. 75% of the gifts that helped to found the new National Museum of African American History and Culture came from Black people. And so, if that is the case, then choruses should also be finding ways to engage with donors who don't look like the traditional ticket buyer of a chorus. And they're probably Black, Indigenous, or people of color. They may be bisexual, gay, lesbian. They may be differently able. But the whole point is, how can you invite as many people reflecting as many diverse stories and diverse lived experiences to the table to participate in the chorus's offerings?
Wow, thank you so much, Antonio. think you raised so many great points, and some of them are just getting to the surface. And I think that's a great opportunity, for anybody who wants to learn more. I know the Institute is going to be an opportunity to delve more into that, and I hope you will all check that out. I think we have a little bit more time before we get to the top of the hour, just to say some thank yous. And of course, first to you, Antonio. Thank you so much for joining us for this great conversation and for this work that is continuing both before and after this conversation to make the Institute really valuable.
Thank you, Mike.
I'd love to thank our colleague behind the camera today, Casey Cook, who makes all of this happen. I've noticed on my screen a little bit some occasional glitches with the video that I've been working through. So I'm not sure if those have come through for you. If so, apologize. But our experience has been our audio has been very solid in these presentations so far. So for the moment, we're trying to bear through these conversations since they're just based on conversation so strongly. But we'll of course be evaluating our platforms as we continue to do these. And right now, I would love to acknowledge that none of us do this work alone. It takes a lot of us, and with that, I'd love to give a shout out to the sponsors of the Institute who are working with us, the DJ McManus Foundation and Harmony Helper, and it really means a lot. It's essential for us to have partners who strongly believe in access, diversity, equity, inclusion, and are and committed to doing work in that arena. So thank you, and thank you all for tuning in. I should leave you with some information on how to check out the Online Institute if you're interested in learning further, which means I have to go open my web browser and do it right now and give you the URL. Please visit chorusamerica.org/online institute. That's all one word, Online Institute. I'm sure we will throw this in the comments or the description of this video when we post it as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Antonio, again, really excited for the Institute. Thank you so much. Take care and best of luck with the upcoming semester.
Thank you so much, Mike. You as well.
Thank you. Enjoy your work at University of Michigan. All right.